Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 446. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us live. And of course, if you're watching this when we recast it on Wednesdays, 11:30 a.m. Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, 11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, London, England time for our EU and Mideast friends, welcome as well. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, every week with our live show, or in your case, a recorded pre-broadcast. And for everyone that's joining us on our simulcast, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, multiple channels, multiple pages, and also TV on our Hospitality Channel TV station. That you can find on anything from YouTube TV, Google TV, well, it's actually the player, Amazon TV, Fire Sticks, Apple TV, Samsung, LG, any smartphones, Vizio. We're all on all of them. And also, if you use your gaming console, you can catch us out on Twitch as well. So I think we've covered the bases with all that. Also, we do our our recorded audio podcast after this live show, which is also on our hospitality radio station. We broadcast the TV show in 209 countries. We translate everything in 11 languages. And we thank everyone, including those that join us in very strange time zones from around the world, even though it's, again, strange time zone. Anyway, so today's topic has kind of been forced upon us in lots of ways of timing and so forth. We've been touching and talking about the transitions of things that are happening with Google and so forth. To kind of go back chronologically, we look back to July of last year when GA4 was the primary shift over from Universal Analytics into Google Analytics 4, their version 4, and the transition that created, and the need to change how you track data, what data is being tracked, how do you store data. We've had these discussions many times on the show. And then we talked and alluded to many things that were coming up with Google. Well, we're in the middle of all of that right now. So our topic today is very specifically about something that Google's doing right now that's affecting us as hospitality marketers right now, and that is their Performance Max model. So our topic is PMAX. It's an acronym abbreviation. PMAX and Gemini. Gemini is their AI. Are the stars aligning, or is it an eclipse? And I say that in that sense because it is a transition that we will look back forensically and say that's when the things begin to change. We have many markers like that within our history of hospitality marketing, where what we used to be able to do, we can no longer do. The things we're focusing on are no longer being allowed, or they're redefined as to how we can do them. Case in point is like keywords. I go back a few years when I say this. When Google took away our usage of what keywords were being used organically, what were the most productive keywords. And they took that away from us and gave us attribution modeling, saying this is a better way of looking at your data. Rather than fixating on what word is being used, let's look at the context and the intention of the words in combination as to what they were looking for. It was their enhancement to be a better personal assistant for those that were using their platform. And for that reason, they wanted to get us as marketers off of the usages of keywords. Well, that was a pivot time of marketing strategy change because it changed how we were able to do things. We no longer could evaluate traffic performance based on the words that were used to bring people to our website. Instead, we had to look at how those words were collectively being used and what they were doing on our website by the attribution metrics that Google was giving us. Another good, strong benchmark of transitions for us was this GA4 from last year, where we went from what we had used to have done in our sense of our analytics of creating goals and insights and so forth, to now a complete view of all data and selectively choosing what data it is that we wanted to see from all the data that was being collected. But more importantly, the evaluation of how the data was focusing. It wasn't so much focused on the reporting of the data as it was the ability to create audiences from the data, to collectively identify those people that you want to talk to more when it comes to your product onto your website, your marketing strategies. That's really what GA4 is. A friend of mine, Aaron Bennett, one of our team, refers to it quite a lot, that GA4 is really an audience builder. This is to feed the Google machine as to understanding what people's usage of their platform does. Now, in all of this past couple of years, and I say past couple of years being shortly definitive, because really it's been about AI's rollout in November of 22. It's pragmatation as to what happened in 23, and now the reality of people trying to plug it into functionalities in 24. Google, it was looked at as like, well, why wasn't Google first? Why did ChatGPT come with OpenAI come out? Why did Microsoft, you get to use it first? And it has expanded Bing's value to us immensely because of the usage of that. and they transitioned their ChatGPT interface with with Microsoft, don't confuse the two, into now what's called their Copilot program, which allows you to use AI ingrained with the function of what you're doing for search queries and so forth with Bing. Well, Google, people look and say, well, gee, you've had AI all this time. You're using AI for search development and bot crawling and so forth and so on. Why aren't you stepping up in front of all this? And they're attempting. Now, they stumbled over themselves a few times with Bard, which is originally what they called, well, it wasn't originally, but what they had recently called their AI. And they now have transitioned that new name into Gemini. Gemini is an interactive platform with Google that allows you to do what you do with Copilot with Microsoft, which is interact with it by asking questions. It's another resource in your search query. So how does this relate to the Performance Max? Well, that's the pivot points we have in history with Google to this point that are definitively different for our culture of marketing. Performance Max is another one of those benchmarks of how the world has changed. Performance Max has been introduced by Google and has been running by Google for a while, where it has tried to fill in the last cracks of opportunity for businesses that don't either have the scale to hire someone that does marketing for them, to have that dedicated payroll towards somebody that's handling the marketing and so forth, and also those places that are looking for a more equitable economic resource where they can dedicate the money strictly to marketing and not have to pay the services to provide the ability to market. Agencies, middleware, third parties. And so for that reason, Performance Max was generated in the kind of catch-all, we can help you. Now, they've tried other iterations of trying to help you spend money with them, like how better way to give them money to advertise. They've tried to really simplify down the ad campaign development process, the usabilities, but it's still a bit of a mystery for some. It's a steep learning curve for others, and they often either have to rely on third parties, such as ourselves or as agencies, and or they have to internalize by hiring somebody that knows it enough to do it for them. Well, here comes Performance Max, and Performance Max was for all businesses to be able to use that says, hey, look, we know that you may know how to do a paid campaign with us, but you may not know how to do a discovery campaign with us, or how to do a YouTube campaign with us, or how to do ads related to click to calls or video ads or whatever, YouTube ads. So let us help you with that and create a Performance Max, which is a platform that says, tell us what you want to do with your advertising. More revenue, more traffic, more clicks, whatever very over top shelf ones that you can choose from. And it will go and ask, it'll look at your website and take all the information from it and use it to put together ads for you. Put together what you need to use it on those platforms. So it'll look at your website and it'll scrape your data, scrape your images, and scrape your logo and say, okay, these are the things we found and this is what we want to use it for. Is that cool with you? Great, good. Do you have any other photos, videos, anything that you can give us that we can use? You load it up. And then it asks you other things like, is there things we should avoid, whatever. And you try to identify them, but this is where things begin to break down. And we'll get back to that in a little bit. And then it will go off and say, well, give us this much money and we'll be able to do all these ads for you. We'll be able to put ads in a variety of platforms. If you're not familiar with all the platforms that it can provide you, from a travel perspective, you have your maps and ads in maps. You have Gmail and your ads in Gmail. You have Discover, which we can get back to a little bit more detail because I don't think people understand the whole Discover program as much. Google Search, obviously, the search engine result pages. Google Display Ads, which is another place that most people in general don't understand what that venue form is. YouTube ads, people are a little bit more familiar with those because they're inundated with them. And of course, the perennial hotel ads. So for that reason, it was a nice one-stop shop that they offered. Here's where things were having issues. Not everything looked good that it was made. They made ads for you, but you looked at it as like, wow, that's a really terrible looking image ad. That's not our image, or that's, they pulled the wrong image from someplace because they thought it was an image that was related to you and so forth, because they have all of Google to pull from. And whatever they did with your image from your website isn't quite right. He zoomed into the wrong. So there was errors problems with it. And that was Performance Max. So now they say they're going to incorporate their AI platform, which was formerly Bard, now Gemini, as a resource in Performance Max to better create the content, images, videos, writabilities of ads and so forth for what Performance Max is doing for you. This really steps up the value proposition of PMAX from the idea that now there is more creative process involved with what ads are being made for you, a better scale of it, where it doesn't look like it was just Frankensteined together, but rather creatively crafted together because there's more creativity with the AI program helping Performance Max. Again, Performance Max and Gemini being combined, it's like a Captain Obvious, of course. They're from the same source of product, Google. Why wouldn't Google try to augment what its Performance Max program does, as well as what its Gemini AI does to counteract how people are perceiving the usages of AI in their daily work life? And we've had this conversation about AI before being a novelty for some, a curiosity of inclusion, helping with generalized local long form content, short form content. It stumbles over itself sometimes. It's interesting to engage with, but it's hard. It's hard to rely upon it because of some inconsistencies or inaccuracies. Because we always say that AI has a problem with truth and authenticity. So there's always these conflicts of things to it. But when this environment of Gemini combined with PMAX, Performance Max, Google's performance maximization model, it allows for a larger creativity rather than just a cut and copy, crop and paste kind of environment for it. It allows for variations of ads that didn't exist before because PMAX would make ads, but it wouldn't make a whole lot of ads. Now Gemini can give you variations of ads that you can choose and see which ones make you feel better, sound like you, what you would like to say, that kind of stuff. So it's going to enhance that. Again, how does this work to us for hospitality? Well, we talked about it briefly last week towards the end of the show as to the variation of what PMAX is offering, and that is Google's Performance Max for travel. Now, what this is a niched and probably a replicant of many other niched aspects of how Performance Max will begin to target certain large industry segments. Hospitality has been one of the first ones that have rolled out. Matter of fact, it is the first segmented version of Performance Max that has rolled out. And what it does is it highlights the serviceability of using Google's Performance Max to drive business, transient business, specifically directly to your hotel. Now you're sitting there like, why is Google being so nice to us? Well, for one, we're a huge revenue source for them for ads. Travel ads is one of the largest usages of activity and paid campaign modeling on Google, as always has been. Two, they now have a lot of, if not mostly all, the pieces to the puzzle in their stable. And when I say that, I say about going way back in the history of Google when they bought IATA and got into the travel space. We've been long since familiar with Google Travel. We know about their hotels and their flights, and they're keeping track of everything and usabilities and so forth. And you always wonder, it's like, well, that's a wonderful, helpful service, and of course, there's ads and so forth with it that there's optimization for, but that's got to be costing them more than it's making for them. Yes, under the idea that the strategy is now coalescing together and the tools are being implemented together. So in a short version world, this Google Performance Max for travel is aggregating all of the Performance Max functions with one very strong inclusion, and that is hotel ads. If you're not familiar with HPA, hotel performance ads, that is the meta search section you see. That is the listing below when it shows hotels in comparison to the destination you're looking, and or if you're looking at a hotel, the meta search to the right side that is of other people, including yourself, hopefully, if you're doing their ad campaigns with them, that's representing your inventory. Now, last week's show, we talked about how Google changed meta search where they're stopping the commission model, which was a support role that they tried to do to keep revenue going to them, but the auspice was they were helping the travel industry during the COVID lockdown, where they would allow for campaigns to be built based on production so that you would be only paying for ads that produced a commission model. And so that meant that you weren't having to just spend money in the hopes that you would be generating the respondent revenue to cover the cost of advertising, but rather as OTAs do, where they say, pay for what we produce, pay this commission for what we produce. Well, Google's phasing that out. By the end of this month, you no longer, which is a week away, you will no longer be able to make any of those commission model ads. And then by the end of March, it'll be shut off. By the end of May, it'll be completely, by the end of April, it'll be completely gone. We talked about that last week in show number 445, which is really going to put a tailspin on a lot of these service agencies that have been touting that they do meta search for you, when in fact, all they're doing is setting up these automated commission models, letting it run, and then telling you how much you have to pay with a fee put on top of it, in the hopes that you never understood you could have done it for yourself. So it's going to put them into a tailspin because now they have to actually manage the accounts that they're offering to do for you in such a way that if they don't do it well, then it will cost them more money, definitely than historically, because that was all performance based. And the margins are different. So they're going to have to charge different. And sometimes, a lot of times, these metasearch service agencies or metasearch as a service profile of the agency didn't have a resource internally to handle it other than the person that set up the automated commission account. So they're looking at a very hard choice of internalizing a person that can actually do the work or sunsetting the service in their service profile because they don't have the means to fulfill it on a regular basis profitably. But going back to why we're talking about it, it's in the scope of the performance max for travel, maximization for travel, that Google is offering. Other things in the performance maximization for travel is YouTube ads, display ads, search ads, Discover ads, Gmail ads, and map ads. Now, I want to break these down a little bit as to understanding the value proposition as it relates to hospitality marketing. YouTube ads, we've always known to be an incredibly high value when it comes to visualizing what you're selling. What the old typical adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 10 million. So the idea of being able to visually create an ad for yourself. Now, there's several ways, there's several ad types in YouTube, and we're not going to get into that. We've actually had shows about creating ad campaigns for YouTube, and pre-roll, interrupted roll, skip roll, end roll, all the different ways of doing this. We're just going to get into the concept of advertising for YouTube under the idea of what it is that you put up front of it. The easiest step into YouTube advertising is what's called motion stills, which are, you don't have a video, but you soft animate an image. It's a gradual diagonal transition fade or zoom pan out, just a motion to the, rather than just having a picture sit still there, and a lower third text or audio over it, which makes it a little bit step up. But at least the text over it with some call to action on it. That's the easiest short stepping stone. Usually those are very short. They're a matter of a few seconds, no more than 15ish, because it's hard to keep somebody staring at the same picture unless you're doing one picture transitions into another where you have now fades or dissolves between one picture to the next. That's very easy YouTube ads to create. They're not the most productive ones, but they're the easiest way for a property that doesn't have its own internal services to generate videos. This is a good, easy first step to create these types of these ads to be used on YouTube. Obviously, the next progression of ads for YouTube would be a video. That requires a higher skill set as to actually taking the videos and editing them together and providing them into a storyboard of beginning, middle, and end that has a call to action function or an awareness function that gives you information that's necessary for the people to act on what they've seen in your ad. They can be a little bit longer, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. The longer, the harder it is to keep retention, the better the quality video you need. But there's now an expense that's there, or a skill set that's there to produce those types of ads. Those are usually the most prohibitive, and where most of the hotels that are trying to do it on their own or have an agency that is not large or skilled, they hit that threshold that they can do the motion image ads, but the video ads require something different because that requires photo shoots and staging and setting things up. And why are we making the ads? So you have to create storyboards, and then you have to make variations. You just can't make one ad. You have to make several ads. So you have to make several, what's called B-roll, base footage that you use to piece together the variations of the ads that you would like to make. Then you have to create campaigns and do the targeting. Who do you want to put this in front of? How do you want to be associated with it? All that kind of fun stuff. So it's a much more involved process with YouTube ads. I'll get to why I'm making that sound so dramatic. Then you have display ads, and a lot of people don't understand display ads, and they don't appreciate them for what value they represent in the process of the discovery and engagement of your guests. It's harder for smaller properties to justify display ads because display ads are really about seeding your brand, about making people aware of your existence without necessarily an incredibly direct call to action as to please go buy this, or here's our rate and dates, or here's this, or here's that, please convert. Display ads are not built under the auspices of being a high volume conversion, just direct channel contribution. They're a feeder, much like social media is a feeder to the awareness of your product for what you use it for. So display ads are ads that are allowed to be shown up on websites that you can buy space onto in a bidding process, like most of all of these ads are, that allows your ad, usually video and or image at the very least, to be placed on high traffic websites that in turn get compensated for allowing these ads to show up on their websites and locations and information and so forth. These display ads allow you to be, should you want to be able to pay that amount of money on the New York Times website on page one or whatever page related to travel, it allows you to be present in lots of different places. And the value of it is, of course, is the upper funnel awareness, the discovery funnel awareness of what your product is for what you're doing. Now, obviously, if you're a one property place in a single destination, this strategy isn't always your strongest play if you have limited resources, because you're basically throwing money at the idea that you're making people aware of you in the hopes they pursue their interest. It's more in tune with larger entities or multiple units or soft brand or hard brand that can allow for an awareness that drives to multiple places to dilute the cost value of making that process of display available. It also, again, requires images and videos and all of those things related to the function of the ad itself. And videos and images are critical in the display ad space. Now, SERP pages, everyone, search engine result pages, that's the most familiar and common with people. Those are, showing up on your paid placements on your search engine result page. That's showing up for yourself, so to speak. Okay, competing with others that are trying to show up to sell your product and so forth. And of course, your organic optimization is a whole other thing that we're not talking about SEO today, but just the advertisement. The discover ads are something that people are very vague about. These are ads that go into the realm of Gmail. They go into the realm of Google, the Google app. It goes into the YouTube app. It goes into the ability to show up in a variety of devices and a variety of Google mediums. Now, it's very similar in concept to discovery ads in a way, except for you're more dedicated to the Google platform, not to other platforms that are allowing for Google ads. Okay. You're aware of being in the Google ecosystem with your discovery ads. These ads are usually rich carousel ads, image ads that gets things in front of large audiences that if I go to my Google app, not a SERP page, but like YouTube app or something, I'll see ads that are related to my usage of YouTube that aren't YouTube ads. Well, they are, but it's because it's in the Google ecosystem, the Google YouTube app, the Google Gmail app. I'll see them in there. That's discovery ads. And it's really an underutilized resource, but it also requires a certain crafting of good filters as to whom you're wanting to be in front of for what reason. Google has a greater, almost infinite control over how it displays what you're doing in discovery for all that it knows of its users. If it saw me looking at or related to what you are as a product, it's going to show your ad to me if I'm using Google products. That's what the Discover ad platform does. One that doesn't get used an awful lot is Gmail. A lot of people use it, millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people use Gmail. I'm one of them. And in there, you always have the things on the top bar of being promoted ads. It is related to the content that's in your Gmail. Make no mistake, you're the product. What you use Gmail for free, they use your data to sell people to, like us as marketers too. Those ads have great impact when it follows the context of what you may be engaged with in Google's ecosystem, of what you're searching for, where you're going. Even outside of Google's ecosystem, it knows where you went and where you go. Usually, most of the time, the analytics are on the place you go to anyway. So as a first-party cookie, it knows more about what you're interested in. So it begins to show things in your Gmail account related to what it hopes to be directed interest of yours. That's Gmail advertisement. A lot of people don't know how to do that. Now, yes, you can do it through the discovery program. Yes, you can do it specific to your Google Ads campaign program in Gmail. You can define that as an ad campaign type. But a lot of people don't understand how to do that because it's a different context of an ad. You don't write the ad the same. You don't make the ad the same. You don't put the content related to the ad the same. You don't have a driver the same. The call to action is not the same. It's a nuance. You don't write an ad like you would for a SERP page and think that it's going to be effective in a Gmail ad. It doesn't work the same. There's limitations and different things that you are allowed to do in a Gmail created ad that you can't do on other platforms, on other aspects. And the last tool that I want to talk about in the Performance Max for travel. And this is in PMAX as well, just the hotel ads are the variant to PMAX versus PMAX for travel. And that is the Maps. Maps is absolutely incredible. I would throw into this conversation the Google My Business platform. I know GMB isn't called GMB anymore, Google Business in general, but the idea of your resource of how your business is represented in the Google ecosystem. And the fact that since we're in the hospitality travel industry, Maps is an incredibly high volume traffic tool that is persistently engaged with people in the Google system. People look to Maps for Google as being the best maps online to go to. I still, as much as I enjoy Apple Maps, and I'm an Apple person on every product that I have, I still use Google Maps for just about everything in relationship to travel for me. It is the more accurate, it's the imaging, it's the capability of using them, whatever. Ads for that also are targeted to where in the map are they looking? Are you a part of that map that they're interested? But that's an easy one. What about the idea of what you are compared to what they're looking for? That's the content of it. What you are in relation to what they're interested in. That's the discovery of it. There's so many aspects of how maps can get used through the entire strata of engagement that it is an incredibly valuable, persistent engagement platform in Google that you should always be in. Most people do not know how to make ads for Google Maps, and yet it is incredibly valuable to have them on there. So why are we bringing up all these platforms? Again, hotel ads, which is metasearch and Google Hotel Performance Ads, HPAs, YouTube ads, display ads, SERP pages, Google search ads, Discover ads, Gmail ads, map ads. I would add one that I think is going to get added into it, but it's kind of a subcategory of maps right now, and that is Google's places to go. It's opening up a venue that is allowing more engagement for people to sell tickets or offer tickets or offer the event activities directly through Google rather than you going to have to go to their individual website. You can actually now create a campaign that will allow you to sell tickets to a boat ride or circus or a music event or whatever within the Google ecosystem. It's called Google Places to Go. It'll rise up, I think, onto this list of what PMAX will be able to put advertisement for, where you'll be able to advertise within the ecosystem of places to go related to being able to buy tickets to places. Think of it as a Ticketmaster kind of version of Google, where it allows you to get tickets directly to those that are offering tickets rather through an intermediary like Ticketmaster, because it's in the venue area that you're looking to go to. Like I'm going to New York and XYZ musicians are playing there, and lo and behold, I see that in my places to go in Maps or in my Google Discovery. And from it, I can directly go in and buy tickets from the venue without having to go through, it's redirecting me to Ticketmaster. Now, if the platform decides to use Ticketmaster as their place to sell tickets from, it's another story. But if they're selling tickets directly, they can do that as well. And even if they do either or, the fact that they're advertising to make sure that they show up in front of you based on the fact that you're considering a travel destination and they're included in it, that's a venue I think is going to get added into this list of things that PMAX does right now for travel. So there we have it. There's this pantheon of services that's available in Travel Max. And I call it Travel Max, sorry, PMAX for travel. And a lot of the agencies have kind of been the intermediary where they've tried to say, we provide these services. You hire us and we'll make sure you're in Google Mail, or we'll make sure you're in YouTube ads and so forth. But then it's like, well, then we have to come over and do the video shoots and so forth. The effort of making the ads for YouTube, or the effort of making the ads for display, or the image ads and so forth, even though there's tools out there to help everybody, and we certainly talk about a lot of the tools on our podcast, it's still challenging for properties to either learn how to use them, learn what to use them on the Google platform for. But anyway, there's obstacles, there's hurdles, there's learning curves, there's lack of time. PMAX and Performance Max for travel, Travel Max, I said, don't worry about it. Just come here and define what it is that you want us to do in the sense of performance and or revenue and or traffic, or what, going to a certain location, clicking to a certain thing, producing a certain thing. You can define upper funnel what you would like to do, and it'll calculate based on what it needs, and then it'll go look at your resources and tell you what it can produce. And now we have Gemini, which is their AI telling that they can offer more enhanced creative work for you in the sense of better written content, better image optimization in the sense of cutting and cropping and utilizing and maybe duplicating, replicating, or variating and creation of different things, creating more creative ads, more creative videos, more creative images of everything and content, and have it as a more professional level and professional being quality of creativity availability to you. And all you have to do is sign the check and tell them to turn it on. That's what Travel Performance Max is trying to be. I mentioned on the last show and the show previous, 444 as well, that we're talking about doing a comparative analysis of agency-driven performances versus Performance Max. I can tell you Performance Max will always do well because it is built by the very people on the platform that we're trying to negotiate through as advertisers. They're basically already one step ahead of us, if not 10, because it's their own platform. So their own services will always perform best on their own platform. Here's where kind of the wheels on the wagon for grandpa fall off a little bit, though. It doesn't fit for everyone, and it creates problems for others. Brand, this is an enigma of an issue. We've seen more and more where a branded property attempts to go on its own, strike on its own, and do a PMAX or Performance Travel Max ad campaign. And you look at the ad and it says it's them, but you go to the ad and it's pointing to another branded hotel. And the reason being is that they didn't clarify with the platform well enough not to, or to exclude every name. Now, just to think of this in concept, if you're a Marriott product, how many thousands of names do you have to put in the negative list to exclude all other properties that have Marriott in their title? That's a problem. And I over dramatize that. That's not the full solution, but that is a problem when it comes to the diversity of your brand representation in your market for you that could equally show up what you're paying for, but it's producing for somebody else. Because Performance Max, if you tell it to go and look at performing better revenue for you, it will look for the best performing revenue sources based on what you said you are. If you're a Marriott X hotel, it sees Marriott. And if another Marriott hotel in your market is performing or converting better because it knows this, then it might say that's where you want me to send it because that's producing better and you want me to produce more. So that's the place I'm going to go to produce more with for you to make your number. Unfortunately, it's selling the other hotel, not yours. We found this actually happening. Not necessarily in that scenario, but as a scenario like it. So it has its issues still. And it also has user issues still, because as much as it's touting the simplicity of UI experience, user interface experience, of it's simple to come in, click a couple of squares, make a couple of titles or the definitions, tell it where you want to pull the data from, give it the money and go. It in fact creates issues that take twice as much time to unravel the issues that it creates than it would be had to have been constructing the campaigns correctly, measuring and modifying the campaigns based on individual performance, not to a collective singular goal that sometimes blunts the efficiency. Think of it like the stock market. And people always talk about the risk factors and so forth. If you're out to make as much money as fast as you can from what you can do, you're going to be one of those crazy people that are constantly on their phone or their computer day partying, and I'm my minute, buy high, sell low, turn it on, turn it off, turn it, that kind of thing. Or you're other people that's like, look, the market goes up, it goes down, it's changed, it's gone whatever way it is. But the idea is staying in the market is what produces the best result. So for that reason, the mode that you're asking it to do is as critically important as the result that you're hoping to gain from it. And I've seen this already, you can't run both without them being mutually exclusive to each other. You can't, because what you'll end up doing is if you try to run an ad campaign agency style, let's say, compared to a Performance Max for travel, other style, you'll find that you'll cross over and you'll cost more money for both sides. Kind of like paying for advertisement that somebody else is paying for and you're paying them to do it. You're actually increasing the cost for both channels. The problem that PMAX for travel creates is it creates laziness, number one, because you feel like there's a simple solution to a complex problem. Number two, it creates laziness in agencies because agencies struggling to find possibly bandwidth. And to give you some insight to agencies, there's always a roller coaster ride of having too many resources and not enough clients, and too many clients versus not enough resources. And every time you hire up to the client demand that you need, you have to basically staff higher than your demand. So now there's a higher cost factor for the bandwidth you've created internally, a larger overhead, payrolls and so forth, until your client list rises to your bandwidth list, and you're faced with the next decision of who next to add to your bandwidth to compensate for the higher demand usage of your clients. So there's this roller coaster that goes on. PMAX is an interesting placebo as a solution. It seems to be that if you do this, it'll solve your problem because you don't need to hire somebody to adjust for the additional demand that your client is doing. You can offer more campaign success, more campaigns operating, less creative overhead, and so forth. It's a wonderful thing. But like a placebo, it's a fake effect because it creates problems that create twice as much work for the people to sort out where it created duplicities, overlaps, and issues and accuracies. It does help in other ways, in lots of ways, when it comes to creativity, especially with this Gemini inclusion, which is why we're looking at it from a comparison point of view, is a lot of hotels would love to have more videos. A lot of hotels would love to, and probably do amazingly well. We would tell them they do amazingly well from the traffic we would see they would generate on YouTube. They just don't have the collateral content to do this, to be able to put those ads on YouTube because they don't have the videos or the photography that they need to create these things, or they don't have the creative put together to be able to use it. PMAX solves that because it'll create that stuff that it needs to go onto its own platforms. It'll make the video ads for you. It'll make the image ads for you. It'll make the content for the text ads for you. It'll make the call to actions in your Gmail. It'll make the call to actions in your display. Wherever it sees, based on the goal you give it, where it needs content or creative to do that platform in its own ecosystem, it'll self-generate for you. There's the rub of it. It can create some really funky content, or it can create brilliant content. Gemini is supposed to help with that, where it makes better content so that you look better for doing it. It wants to be that cell. So how does this all work in the wonderful world of? Well, more and more, we started the show talking about the impact of Google's grand plan coming into fruition, the GA4 conversion and the limitations of being able to now rely upon GA4's black box of algorithms associated with attribution, where we're waiting for Google to tell us what the data means, unless you have your own data structure that you use and monitor for yourself. A lot of people don't. Believe me, they don't. That's a lot of our business right now, is literally creating data and analytics for a lot of people, understanding the data that they now have available and how to use it to their own means without relying upon Google waiting to tell them what it is. The second is we're going through now a iteration of change and transition of finally Google joining all the other platforms in the reduction of cookie usage. Now, you've heard this as buzzword conversations. You've heard this as an apocalyptic event or whatever. It's not, but it is transitional. Cookies are basically what we have grown up on in universal analytics as a means to understand the usage of our guests to our website, where they came from, where they went to, when did they come back, what did they do, what did they touch on other platforms, to understand more about them, to know what part we played in their eventual potential, hopeful, fingers crossed, conversion of something, buying a hotel room from us or a restaurant meal or whatever. Well, cookies is our methodology, and a lot of your service agencies rely upon using their cookies or cookies of other platforms to derive the data that they need to market with. Let's give a wonderful case study of where Facebook got it wrong and it hurt them in ways that they never anticipated. About 2 years back, iOS 14, now 3 years back maybe, came out where they were now restricting the privacy. We went through this, made the news a lot, where everything now on Apple was like, hey, do you want to give this app permission to get this information and so forth? This simple gateway is like, hey, it's my information. Do you want to share it with this platform or not? Mark Zuckerberg, on his quarterly call with the company, said, we're not really worried about this. iPhone users represent roughly 11% of our total user base. So they can shut off our ability to understand, because what Apple was basically doing, especially in their Safari programs and their apps program, was giving people the choice of whether or not Facebook can track what they were doing. Facebook's marketing model is, we know so much about our users that you give us money and we can put your ads with all the choices that you want to make as to who you want the ads in front of. All that data that we know about them is what you get to choose from to make sure your ads are in front of the right people. Well, it turns out that 11% of iPhone users, if that number was correct, represented almost half of their revenue generation marketing. So they took a serious blow to their revenue generation of their ads, because what I mean by revenue generation of their ads is ads that were getting, say, a 10-to-1 return on Facebook. This is great. I want to just keep giving you money. All of a sudden, they went down to 5-to-1. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Just massively turned more expensive for me to do ads on Facebook. Social's not doing as well. Meanwhile, other platforms like Google were doing the same as they always had been. So let's not spend as much money with Facebook and let's spend more money over with Google, which is what happened. And all of a sudden, Facebook, for the first time, didn't make money every day over the other day. And for the first time, its users started going down, not going up. And it had a serious impact on its business and its entirety, billions of dollars, in addition to them investing heavily in VR and so forth. So there's a lot of perfect storm stuff that happened with them. But that miscalculation of the impact of the loss of cookies was a very good textbook example of when things go wrong from what you thought it was going to happen. Now, Google was supposed to follow the train a couple of years back, saying we're going to get rid of cookies too and so forth, but they weren't ready for it because they still were using Universal Analytics. And one of the strongest functionalities of Universal Analytics was the ability to understand traffic via how cookies were being used. That was one of the basic modalities of Universal Analytics, because you had to measure goals and insights. And to do that, you had to track what you were looking at, which required cookies. Google will never cut its nose off to spite its face when it comes to revenue. So it had to redefine a model so that the revenue wouldn't get lost from a transition. And it has to always appease our user base. It can't be what we don't expect Google to be. It can't give us bad results, so to speak. So it had into this new model of GA4, which is, we talked about before, an audience-based model, audience generation-based model. And then that way it said, we're going to start diminishing cookies because only first-party cookies can be used. Well, since Google has been giving itself away free as an analytics tool forever, it's on pretty much mostly everything. I would say that mostly because you have AWS and other platforms, but for the most part, Google is the largest player in the analytics world when it comes to online traffic. So for that reason, they will always be first-party cookie data. So as of the beginning of this year, they first started with a 1% drop in cookie usage. They're finally migrating to reducing cookies because now they've replaced their marketing model with the fact that they are the source of data. They're going to stop everybody else from bleeding data on cookies because they can track it and say our ad campaigns can sustainably run better than most other people. And with anybody with cookies, they won't be able to do as well as we do. They started at 1% in January, which is around 30 million users, which is a drop in the bucket. But here's the accelerant to this. By the end of the third quarter, or maybe by the beginning, because Google's kind of vague about how this is going to accelerate, all the cookies on Chrome will get shut off. Now, already Safari, that's the case. Already in Firefox is the case. In Microsoft Edge, it is the case. Chrome is the last holdout of the real cookie frontier. And as it diminishes now very quickly, you're going to find a lot of services that relied upon cookie data, third-party data, now trying to determine how they can still do that effectively at a level that's worthy of you giving them money to advertise for. So for that reason, there is a change that's going on. Ironically, at the same time, that Google has been offering Performance Max, more and more utilization of their resources by them, for you, where you stay in their ecosystem. They're promising simplicity, unification, and production, all within the idea of just walking up to them, handing them your money, and telling them what you want for it in return. They handle everything. They're going to have their own analytics. They're going to have their own engagement with information for you. They're going to have their own content. None of that you get to keep. If you turn off your PMAX, unless you copy and paste and screen grab stuff, there's not a download capability that says, oh, I want that video for something else. No, the video is for what they use it for, not what you can use it for. It's a part of what they created for you to be used by them, for you. It doesn't mean you get to go run off and put it in your Facebook ads. It doesn't mean you get to run off and put it in your Pinterest. It doesn't mean you get to run it off and put it in your Microsoft one. Now, not by anything ironic, but out of copycat worlds, Microsoft, Bing, is doing exactly the same thing. They have their own version of Performance Max. They have their own version of how they do Meta. They have it's like a ghost of what Google does. Their same model is being used in Microsoft. Their Copilot program is being used, or will be, I should say, used into their generated performance maximization model that they have. This is where things are shifting to. There's going to be agencies that are simply going to be at the facilitator of making sure that these tools that Google is offering gets used. They make no pretense that they're trying to advance anything other than just the function of creating these things for you, and hence the cost of doing it is commensurate. There's other agencies, which are the ones I worry about most. They're going to try to mask that they're using these things or functioning within the usage of these things while acting like they're doing this directly for you. Those are the ones I'm worried most about. So all of this is happening with us now, and all of this is happening quickly with us now. I mean, as I said, the cookie diminishment by Google standards and what they've been announcing will be done at the very least at the end of the third quarter this year, at the earliest at the beginning of the third quarter. But any which way, that diminishment, okay, will change the scope of service profiles for a lot of third-party service providers. Now, there's still other resources for data. This doesn't blind them completely. And it changes how they have to function. It doesn't change that they can't function. It just changes how they're functioning. So it's important to know that this isn't like, oh my gosh, companies are going to go up and under. I think there'll be some transition, especially for the companies that were borderline anyway, and or that they were masking what their true service profile was by augmenting themselves with things like PMAX when it first rolled out and so forth. I think they're going to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. It depends on the client's awareness and aptitude for chasing down questions as to whether or not they get called for it in that sense. So that's yet to be seen. No calling anything bad, but I think there'll be some transitions when it comes to that. I think it'll also open up a new venue of people that get very good at knowing how to talk with Google and Bing as to exactly how to modify these platforms to negative match correctly, to identify highlighted content correctly, to feature correctly, to correct what is being offered as content generation correctly, to really sharpen the point to the pencil as to how well the platform that Google is offering, Bing is offering, in that unification process of performance maximization, that can be utilized. I think that's a new frontier for agency development. That being said, where it goes from running it the way it used to be and so forth, there's pros and cons. We're literally going through a process now. We're doing a training module. We'll be offering it up with the link on the. Actually, I'll be putting some other links on the show notes here too about the link to the Google Performance Max for Travel video guide. I'll put the link up for that. I'll also put another link up for what is really discovery ads. A lot of people don't understand what discovery ads are, so I thought I'd throw that link in there too. And some quotes as to what they're doing for the transition off of the cookies. That'll be in the show notes. But we're doing a training program on the utilization of Performance Max for travel for hospitality marketing. We're going to have that travel out. We'll put the link up. It's a pay-for training, though. This is stuff that's usable for people in a lot of great senses. So we're putting training modules up for it. The idea is that people need to understand the value proposition, they make their own determination as to how much they want to use it, if at all, at this point, whether they want to wait and continue with their agency model or whether they want to start delving into the Performance Max. But I do, on the air of caution, from what little we've seen so far, a little, actually a lot, it's an either or. It's very hard to do it as an and because it does step on each other. Unless you're very good at granularly defining your Performance Max goals, compared to very much granular definement of your marketing goals, your segmentations as to how you're targeting. You can make them play nice with each other, but Google, if you let them the beast out too much, is going to do whatever it takes to hit the thing that you asked it to do. And that may mean stomping on your other efforts and campaigns because it knows no different. So things to consider. Well, that is our discussion today. Again, a topic of discussion today was PMAX and Gemini. Are the stars aligning or is it an eclipse? The eclipse obviously being our conversation about agencies and current and future agency models, and what PMAX and Gemini's combination may mean from a usability and creativity perspective, whether it's a new dawning of Aquarius. Should have that song in the background. Anyways, if you want to know more about what we're doing in the sense of our Hospitality Marketing Club, which is a peer-based club for hospitality marketers, you are free to join. Just simply go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email address in. I send you a quiz. If you pass the quiz 90%, which is 9 out of 10 questions, we'll send you a link to join us. There's tiers related to it in the sense that everything's free for right now. We're still opening it up to create a community that's useful and helpful for everyone. We do weekly live Q&As. We do live webinar conversations about topics such as this. This is actually kind of one of the inspirations that came from our conversations from that. It is a peer group. It's not there to teach you the basics of hospitality marketing. It's there to take people that are doing hospitality marketing and make them better marketers. Techniques and tools about how to function better and use, and creativity, and control functions and filters and things that you don't often have somebody else to talk to next to your desk. And you operate in a bubble, and it's very hard to find the research and the information necessary to make a good decision. Well, here we have a peer group. You get to actually ask those questions. There's an active board on it, and so forth and so on. From that comes our training modules that we do put out. We do teach basic. I mean, I get so tired of seeing poor basic training for hospitality marketing, where I see people train people in hospitality marketing, not because they do hospitality marketing, but because they teach what others do in hospitality marketing. Why not learn it from the people that actually do hospitality marketing, that actually function in that space, rather than learning from somebody that talks about it? I see a lot of training out there from a lot of associations as well that offer this training. They're not hospitality marketers, but they're training as if they're teaching you to do it. They're not doing it. So better trainer is the person that actually does it. Anyway, that's axe I grind on that. But we also have advanced and intermediate and advanced training as well. Different scopes, different aspects, whether it's platform based or whether it's cumulatively based, strategic based, which is the real niche aspect of professional marketing. Is not so that you know how a platform like Facebook works, but rather how does Facebook work with everything else to what you're doing for the goals that your company is wanting. That's the nuance that we try to go over and get into the advanced training with. So that's all there. We do our audio podcast. After this show, we'll do an audio podcast. We'll talk more specifically about tools, more in this case, tools related to Performance Max. We'll go through a little bit of the Performance Max tool function so people understand more of the ons and off switches related to it. But that podcast we always do. Again, the live show, TV show, what this is, 10 years every week and running. Same too with our podcast. Actually, our podcast has been running for 17 years, but 10 years weekly. Which mirrors and goes. We go recap the show a little bit on the podcast, but again, we specifically grind into some tools and so forth. And all of our podcasts, along with a lot of great other podcasts from a lot of other great people in the hospitality industry, are on the hospitality radio. We created the radio station because we wanted some place as a resource people could just, like a podcast, but cumulatively together, rather than listening to my podcast and then having to listen to somebody else's podcast. We've just asked permissions to put the podcast together. So we have a sales hour. We have a podcast related and content related to sales within hospitality marketing. We have a operations hour. We have a meta search hour. We have marketing. We have a lot of variety of stuff. So, and we have replays of the podcast. We have replays of the live shows and everything audio wise on the hospitality radio. And that you can just go to hospitalityradio.com and listen in. Plus, we're also on, I figure it was 27 channels globally, digital radio stations around the world. And again, the live show here, this, and also our podcast is translated into 11 languages, and we recast the live show here in different time zones, 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, both in Sydney, Australian time, and 11:30 a.m. Wednesday on London, UK time for our Asian Pacific friends and our European and Mideast friends. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time, and I look forward to talking to you all next week.